I don't want to have to explain to Mazda why there's crushed bits of bicycle all over the front of their Mazda 3. What's up, YouTube? Jax here, and welcome to my very first car review of the Mazda 3. So I brought the Mazda 3 up here to the Blood Mountain Richard B. Russell area, which, if you don't know anything about Georgia, those are two of the best driving roads in Georgia. And I'm lucky enough to live about an hour away from both of them. So I've been up here tearing around the roads in the 2020 Mazda 3 hatchback, all-wheel drive, premium, and I have to tell you, this car is amazing. Absolutely, stunningly, mind-blowingly amazing in this environment. Now, I'll qualify that in a second, in this environment, but overall, the car is fantastic. The interior is impeccable. It blows my mind that a car in this class, in the same class as like the Civic and the Elantra and the Kia, whatever it's called, and the Chevy doesn't exist anymore, and the Ford Bye-Bye Focus, a car in this class can have an interior of this quality is simply amazing. And you're probably looking at pictures of it right now going, oh, you took an Audi A3 up there. No, it's not an Audi A3. It's better than an Audi A3. Absolutely better than an Audi A3. Oh, and by the way, look at these views, man. Look at these views. Georgia for the win. All right, if you want to review cars in Georgia, there's no better place to come than up here. So what makes the Mazda 3 so good? Simple. Balance, poise, control. I was driving up Blood Mountain at a not unreasonable pace, and the Mazda handled everything I threw at it. The all-wheel drive system operates almost imperceptibly. The car dives into corners. The steering is amazing. It's more alive than most recent cars I've driven, my own Corvette included. I mean, it's a C5. They weren't known for their steering. The Mazda steering is otherworldly, and I really mean that. At low speeds, it's a tad light for my taste, but at high speeds, oh my gosh, the feel and the feedback in something so small, and that's meant to be, an economy car at $31,000 as tested. I don't think it's an economy car. It's definitely playing in a more premium class. Mazda says they're on a journey to premium. They're absolutely correct. You look at something like an Acura ILX, that car is a joke. I mean, a joke. The Acura ILX, are you kidding me? The Audi A3 is the only comparable car to the Mazda, and I would have to say the Mazda is better. Not because I've driven the Audi A3, I have not driven the Audi A3, but the Mazda handles phenomenally well. The interior is world class, and there's a value proposition there. To get an A3 option the way this Mazda is optioned, with navigation, blind spot monitoring, radar, cruise control, all-wheel drive, to get an A3, you would have to spend probably $5,000 to $6,000 more than what this Mazda sticker's for. Speed-wise, it's not the fastest car in the world, and you will notice it if you're an enthusiast driver. But if you are not an enthusiast driver, you would be hard-pressed to tell the difference between this and an Audi A3 or even a Honda Civic. Now, what about something like the Civic Si? Well, as a value proposition, the Si is probably better. I would say it depends on your personal preference for the way a car handles and feels. The Mazda feels fantastic. Now, I haven't driven the Si, and I certainly haven't driven them back to back, but the Mazda's interior is in another league. I have been in the new Civic, and its interior isn't even close. The Mazda's is more attractive with higher spec materials and generally a better overall ambiance. If you're looking for a word, ambiance, I like it, ambiance. But up here in its element, the Mazda shines. We are on some of the best roads in the state, and the Mazda is unflappable. If you push hard enough and you're really pushing it out of a corner, you'll feel a little bit of understeer, but honestly, I can't even detect the all-wheel drive system working. It's completely seamless. It's operating in the background. It shuffles the power to the rear when you need the grip there, and I noticed the car will just pull itself through the corner, and the way it does that after the steering darts in is really exciting. It's really pleasing. And if the car had just a tad more power, it would be an absolute stormer up here on the back roads, where you're surrounded by a lot of hot hatches. You've got cars like Civic SIs, I've seen a Type R, of course you got Subaru WRXs, I haven't seen an Evo because they all probably broke, but you've got a ton of small pocket rocket type of cars. And with Ford announcing that they're not going to continue their small cars, Chevy basically is going to follow that same path. Dodge, Chrysler, nope, not going to happen. You really are looking at Honda, Mazda, and Hyundai with the Veloster N as kind of carrying the torch for affordable performance. And I would say if your priorities skew more towards luxury, or if this is your only car and it's got to do everything, including drive the family and the kids around, then the Mazda is probably the superior choice. It's probably the best choice because the other cars are slightly more single focused. They don't have as nice of an interior. The seats in the Mazda are fantastic. I was chucking it all over the place up here, and I was comfortable and held perfectly in place. I will say I could have used a little bit of a knee bolster, but other than that, the Mazda seats were supportive and grippy, but also supremely comfortable. Remember, I drove an hour to get up here, and I felt great. I left at 5:30 a.m. to bring you the best YouTube content. It's a sacrifice, I know, it's a sacrifice. But I do it for you. I do it because you're watching this channel going, Jax, tell me about the Mazda 3, or you're watching this channel going, I thought there'd be another This Is Why We Ride, and he's reviewing a Mazda 3. Either way, thanks for being here. I do appreciate it. So have I noticed any shortcomings so far? I've only had the Mazda for about 48 hours. I have it the rest of the week, so I will be updating this review as we go along, and I've got an idea for a different location that might play to the Mazda's other sort of mission. But shortcomings so far, other than the lack of a knee pad, I would say space, interior space. Yes, the car is down on power, but to be honest with you, that's not that big of a deal. I would say interior space is probably the other area where the Mazda struggles a little bit. I had a first generation Mazda 3 and I love that car. This car is a completely different animal. It's in a totally different league. My old Mazda 3 hatchback was frankly garbage compared to this car. The interior was made out of plastics that probably were left over from Lego. Like if they had extra plastic, they were like, throw that crap out and someone can use it. And then they used it to make the interior of the old Mazda 3. This one is beautifully put together, beautifully stitched. But the Mazda 3 hatch, the reason I sold my first gen was because of space. My kids got bigger. My 13-year-old, she's 5'9 and a half. I'm 6'6", so you can see where she gets it from. And she was like, this car's too small. And she was like 4. So I got rid of that car and I regretted it. I missed it. It had the 5-speed manual. It was a ton of fun, but it was too small. And this car's really not that much bigger, especially with the driver's seat all the way back, which you can tell I probably need the driver's seat most of the way back. The weird thing is the door is actually a little bit smaller than I remember my old car being. So when the seat is all the way back, I'm behind the B-pillar a little bit. So it has a compromise in visibility and getting in and out of the car. Now I imagine if you are a normal sized human being, this won't be much of a problem. But if you're taller, I would say above 6'3" or so, it's something to consider at least before getting a Mazda 3. Also, if you have children and they sit in the back, that's another consideration. My 13-year-old has to sit behind the passenger seat because she can't fit behind me in the driver's seat. This dude just drove by in a Dodge Stealth. A Dodge Stealth. I haven't seen one of those in a while. That guy's brave too, because that car probably broke down like right over there across the ridge. I better go check it out. Well, the sun's getting pretty high, which means the glamour shot lighting is going away. So I think it's time to jump in the Mazda and get some driving impressions in real time. I'm gonna hook up the GoPro and go up and down the RBR, maybe Blood Mountain as well, and we'll see how it does. I suspect rather well. Sport mode on. You definitely notice a difference in sport mode. The transmission distinctly holds gears longer than it does in the standard mode. Much more aggressive. And we're gonna be going at a reasonable pace. I mean, you know, this isn't my car, so we're not gonna go ham on it. But you see in fairly aggressive turns like these, the car just grips. These Toyo all-season tires are extremely impressive. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is that the seats are just fantastic. Look at that, the transmission kicked down the minute I braked. I braked for the turn and the transmission kicked down. It's like, you're gonna wanna have some fun here. And I was like, yes, transmission. Yes, I do wanna have some fun here. I do think at low speeds, the transmission can be a little jerky, especially with an abrupt liftoff, but that's a minor complaint. What amazes me is on a decreasing radius turn, how planted the car feels and how little understeer there is. It's remarkable. I'm going into this one hot and the car just grips. When the tires do start to protest, and it takes a lot to make them squeal, the car washes out very predictably and the all-wheel drive system pulls it back in. It's almost disconcerting if you've never driven an all-wheel drive car, but you hear a little protest from the Toyos and then the all-wheel drive system kicks you back in to where you're supposed to be to hold your line. Mazda says they tuned the all-wheel drive system differently for the 3 than they did the CX-5. It's more performance-oriented, focusing on making the driving experience as enjoyable as possible rather than outright grip in loose traction or loose surfaces. I don't want to push it too much. There's a lot of cyclists around here, and we all love cyclists on the road in an enthusiast driving mode. Now I have noticed going downhill on this stretch, the understeer is slightly more pronounced, or at least the squealing of the tires is. They're protesting a little bit sooner than they did when I was coming up Blood Mountain. But that makes sense because you're in a front wheel biased car, engines over the front wheels, all the weight's pointing down, but a little bit of brakes and the all-wheel drive system brings it back into line. We're going into some tight ones here, some switchbacks, really see how the car grips. Now as the road flattens out, the car feels a little bit more neutral. The one thing I will say about it being down on power is that you're not gonna get into trouble accelerating out of a corner, that's for sure. You can focus more on your steering inputs. The steering is amazing, just amazing. In a front wheel drive car to have this much feel. You hear the Toyos protesting a little bit there, but the car just gripped and the transmission aggressively holds the lower gear. That is really impressive. The engine's not bad, it sounds decent. It's got a nice little growl to it. I almost wish it was a bit louder. So if you didn't know, here in Georgia, the Richard B. Russell and Blood Mountain are sort of the enthusiast roads of choice, and people lap them kind of like they do at the Tail of the Dragon. You can go up and down the Richard B. Russell. There's some scenic overlooks that I use for the glamour shots and the drone shots of the Mazda. And then there's a turnaround at the bottom, inexplicably a turnaround that's been paved. And you can just turn around and head back up. And you come out here on a 3-day weekend like this weekend, especially later in the day, and there'll be sports cars and motorcycles just tearing up and down and up and down. It's fantastic. There goes one right now. I saw him earlier. He was having fun. Here come some of his friends. They're gonna go past us. Look like adventure bikes, but they are moving quite quickly. We're about to come up on what looks like a 2002 Nissan Sentra, so this enthusiastic drive is going to come to a close, at least until we can head back up. Well, judging by the traffic going up the mountain, I don't know if this drive is going to be quite as spirited. One thing some people have complained about, and it's pretty much true, part of the cost of the Mazda's gorgeous styling comes at the price of visibility. The visibility out of this car, especially for someone my height, is not great. The A pillars are quite thick. Because the seat is back, the B pillar is right next to my head. And then the C pillar, as you can see in the photos and videos, the C pillar is massive. And that's fine from a styling standpoint. The Mazda hatch is one of the most distinctive and pretty cars on the road. But when you are attacking a mountain road like this, it makes seeing out of the car a little bit more difficult. It's sort of like sitting in a Camaro, honestly, probably with better steering. Well, that'll probably about do it for this driving impression, because we are stuck behind a Suburban that's going approximately 25 miles an hour in a 35, which the Mazda tells me, by the way, it displays the speed limit of the road you're on, and then it displays a little red dash on the speedometer to tell you where that speed limit is. And if you go over the speed limit, it traces in red your indiscretions, just to remind you that you're a bad person. Another thing the Mazda has on the inside is a head-up display. The Mazda's is really good, actually. It's bright, it's easy to see. I'm very tall and I can see it clearly. It's unobtrusive. It sits right below kind of your eye line. The only downside is you can't turn it off. It doesn't bother me all that much, but I'm sure some people would rather turn it off. But I think it's a really cool feature on a sort of affordable compact car. Another thing to love about the interior of the Mazda is the gauge cluster and the controls. The infotainment system is extremely easy to use. I've heard some people knock it, saying it's not as advanced as it should be or some such nonsense. I don't care. It is super straightforward, simple to use. I figured it out within like 1 minute of getting in the car. Now, I like technology. I'm a techie kind of person, but still, this infotainment system is fantastic. Simple, straightforward, crisp, clear graphics. Some people have said, oh, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of an Audi or a BMW. Well, first of all, it's not an Audi or a BMW. And secondly, who cares? Audi and BMW, especially BMW, they don't always have the greatest reliability reputation. I have a feeling this system will work quite well for some time. Now, it's easy to see that the interior materials are extremely high quality. I love the feel of the dials. The master control here and the volume control have little knurled rings around them. So do the climate controls, and they turn with very satisfying damped click. It's very pleasant. One thing that kind of surprises me though is the lighting and everything in the interior is very consistent and pretty, kind of crisp LED lighting, but the sport light looks like a little orange incandescent bulb. I'm sure it's not, but why is it so ugly, and why is it right down underneath the D for drive, where it's obscured by the middle of the steering wheel, which is itself very pretty. The steering wheel, by the way, feels fantastic. The leather on it feels great. It's got grips in the perfect spot. You can hook your thumbs in it. The thin 3-spoke design just looks and feels wonderful. Now, I don't know if you can see on the GoPro, but the Chevy Suburban or Tahoe or whatever it was pulled off, and now I'm behind a Subaru Outback with all-wheel drive and bike racks on it, and he is not going fast at all. He's still not going fast. In fact, he's pulling off for me, and I'm only going about 30, so there you go. Let's get after it. I think we may have heated up the tires a tad too much. Grip is a little squirmy on some of these corners that I'm pretty sure were all right earlier. They are Toyo All Seasons, and they're very impressive, but I'm not sure what kind of 10/10 thrashing they have. Not that I'm going 10/10, I'm going really about like 4/10 on the metric system. I don't even know what that means. Yeah, the decreasing radius, they seem to be giving up the ghost a little bit sooner. I've also noticed that the gas mileage is so-so in this car. It's competing in a class where 40 miles per gallon is becoming more and more of a standard. And I know that I'm hitting this thing hard, but I seriously doubt I'm gonna see 30 miles to the gallon. Cannot overstate how good the steering is though. I mean, keep in mind, this is a $31,000 semi-premium hatchback, compact. It is just attacking these roads. And we've got cyclists again. Hello, cyclists, I'm sure you're in great shape. I don't care, get off the road. Anywhere they could ride, and they choose to ride on the two most popular roads in the state. In the state! I love how they turn around and look at you like, what on earth are you doing? Oh, I don't know. Driving on the road, you know, where cars go. I can't help but wonder what this car would be like with like Michelin Pilot 4s. Okay, Harleys. Crossing the center line. Harleys, stay on your side of the road. If you can't make the turn, then don't ride the road. It's not hard. It's a good time to get out and appreciate the view. I hope you enjoyed the driving part of this video. Now let's get back to the main part. The boots in the trees are old and worn out, and when hikers get to the end of the Appalachian Trail, or at the end of this section of the Appalachian Trail, they might have blisters on their feet, they might have holes in their shoes, they might have all kinds of problems with their shoes, so they chuck them up into the tree and they buy a new pair at the general store. There's lodging here, bathrooms, a general store, campground. This is at the top of Blood Mountain, otherwise known as Neal Gap in Georgia, and it's a sort of way station on the Appalachian Trail. So it's pretty cool. I'm actually on the Appalachian Trail right now, but I will hike no further than about 10 feet. I've returned from about 6-7 minutes on the Appalachian Trail, and oh, it's dangerous out there. It's wild, it's crazy. These are the kind of things that you do when you have a Mazda hatchback. You explore, you adventure, you might even hike the Appalachian Trail accidentally. I'm not saying you will, I'm just saying it's possible. The sign says, no camping in this area. Okay, well clearly we already established that the Mazda 3 is fantastic in the mountains, but what happens when you bring it to the other side of its personality? To the ritzy, upwardly mobile, upscale part of town. So I'm here in Buckhead, which is a fairly wealthy area of Atlanta. It's kind of like Atlanta's Hollywood or something like that. It's not like Atlanta's Hollywood at all. Everybody in Buckhead just clicked over to a different video, but it is a wealthy area. So I brought it down here to see if it blends in with the Buckhead lifestyle. So does the Mazda 3 blend into an environment like this? Yes, I would say it does, and here's why. Most of the people in this mall right now, they're not rich, they're just pretending. There's just a bunch of people going around posing and walking into Coach and Burberry and stuff like that. They don't have any money, they're not actually gonna buy anything, but they wish they did. And that's exactly where premium cars fit in. Cars like the Mazda 3, because it's affordable, you could actually own one, but it makes you feel a lot richer than you actually are. And at the end of the day, isn't that what all these people want? This Mercedes is nice, but it costs $22,000 more than the Mazda. Is it worth it? Really? So apparently you can't do a car review on Mazdas in the mall. I was asked politely by mall security to leave. I asked if they liked Mazda. They didn't really seem to be that amused, and they still insisted that I leave. I guess this really is the wealthy mall. Well, I think it would have made for good content if I had gotten thrown out of the mall, but it still brings me back to my original question. Does Mazda belong in a place like this with Rolls Royces? So where does this leave us with the Mazda? Well, I think it absolutely belongs in a place like this. The radar cruise control, the leather seats, the beautiful interior, the lane keep, the blind spot monitoring, the Bluetooth connectivity, the infotainment, all of it says luxury. Mazda wants to be premium or semi-premium or whatever premium means to you or me or whoever else. That's what Mazda wants to be. I think they hit a home run here. The car absolutely belongs down here. And I know you and I both know more than a few people that got out of college and immediately blew their paycheck on some crazy BMW or Audi lease just so they could feel like they made it in the city. But why do that? Why not get a Mazda? Get the handling, get the reliability, get the luxury appointments, get all the bells and whistles that you want without the ridiculous lease payments and at the end of the lease, nothing to show for it. When you can own a car like this, I think that's the better deal. I have to admit though, I love coming down here just for the people watching and the car watching. There are some amazing cars out front, but I don't think that that makes the Mazda out of place. In fact, when the sun goes down and all you see are LED or laser headlights, Mazda blends right in. So where does this leave us with the Mazda 3? Should you buy a Mazda 3, especially at the price point of $31,000? I would say depending on what your priorities are, yeah, you should. The Mazda 3 is a fantastic car for the money. And many of the features that you get on the higher spec model that I was driving, you can get on the lower spec model. You can easily take $5,000 off the price and still get a wonderful and amazing small car that will make you feel a lot richer than you actually are. Keep in mind also that the front wheel drive model handles exceptionally well for the class. All of them might be a bit underpowered, but most people are never going to need more power than what the Mazda provides. I drive a 2009 Honda Accord Coupe every day, and the Mazda hatchback was noticeably peppier than my Accord Coupe, and the gear changes were a lot snappier. I've pulled out many times in my Accord and wanted it to drop a few gears in traffic when it didn't, and it left me high and dry while it just slowly accelerated. The Mazda is a much more enjoyable daily driver than my Accord Coupe. If you're a young family and you live in an urban environment, the Mazda 3 hatchback might be exactly the car that you need. Personally, I prefer the hatchback style. I think the sedan and the hatchback are both phenomenal looking, but I'll take the uniqueness of the hatchback any day of the week, and it looks a lot better than the Honda Civic hatchback, that's for sure, which would be sort of its most direct competitor. I hope you found this review useful, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider leaving a like or a positive comment in the comments, and if you think there's anything I could do better, hey, constructive criticism is always welcome. As usual, drive safe, ride safe. I'll catch you in the next video. This is Jax, the review of the Mazda 3. Excellent car, good value. Go check it out. Peace. Flies. There's a car coming. We'll wait till it passes while I waste footage and time on my memory card. Let's see if it's a cool car. Nope. Not even slightly. It's phenomenally well. Phenomenally. I want to use that word more often. Kind of like arbitrage. You know, Gary Vee always says arbitrage. I want to use that word, even though it doesn't apply here. The Mazda arbitrages. The Mazda's arbitraging. That doesn't make sense at all. Why am I even talking right now? You've lost me. We're completely lost. I have a sharper one. Yeah, no, we're not going to be leaning on the fence. It's a bit of a drop down there. I was thinking about adding a Maserati SUV to my flower bed. Do you think it's too much? I don't think so. trying to get my hand under it. Right there, right there. Do you think that's too much? I think it's just right. I was gonna put one at home. I might have to look up the neighborhood bylaws. I don't know if there's anything against Maserati SUVs in the flower bed, but I'm willing to check. Thought that was an officer of the law for a second, but it was just a Ford Explorer. 19 minutes? What was I talking about for 19 minutes?